Hi, good afternoon. My name is Carolyn Perkins, and I'm here as the host of the update on the NAACP. And this afternoon we have Tom Roberts, the Political Action Chair of the Ohio NAACP, and also he's the Political Action Chair here in Dayton. How you doing, Tom?
Just fine, Carolyn. Just great, thank you.
Okay. Well, I thought since you're Political Action Chair, we might talk today about some of the things that that you might see from your perspective of the election, how it went, who you think might be the bigger loser, or your comments.
Well, that's a good question, Carolyn, because as you know, and many people know, the NAACP is nonpartisan. So whether Democrat or Republican, we're looking at the best people or persons in Congress and in the state legislature and in the county commission, city commission for that matter. Mm-hmm. So it's about the person, not the party. Mm-hmm. And from a historical point of view, I guess you could say there were two historical events. One was a shift in Congress away from Democrat control of the Senate to Republican control of the Senate, U.S. Senate now. And so that means that the Republicans will control both the Senate and the House. In the state of Ohio, however, the makeup of the House and Senate has always been Republican for the last couple of years. And in the House, the Republicans gained more seats than ever before, I think probably going back almost 30-some years. So from that point, we saw a significant historical shift at both the national and state level.
Okay. Here locally, as far as our, well, I guess we had the commissioners and judges, right, and a few other people that were running for office. How did that come out?
Well, as far as the county commission, there was only one commissioner up for election, and he won that race. The disappointment, I think, came when African-American Judge McGee, lost her seat at the Court of Common Pleas. And then also State Representative Roland Winburn lost his seat in the State House. So for us as African-Americans, I think we did in fact lose two seats, a judge and a member of the Ohio General Assembly. So from that point of view, I think it's disappointing. You know, I recently saw or heard someplace a saying that said, if you're not at the table, we're either on the table or the menu. And so I think that's what bothers me more so, because we lost one voice at the table in both the judiciary and in the General Assembly. Our goal now has to be to work with those members that are there, as we have always, to let them know our views, as we did in the general election, as we had candidates night. Mm-hmm. In both, in the Springfield when we had our state conference, and the representative was elected from there. We spoke with him there. And we also had a candidates night here in Dayton, where we spoke to the candidates for the State House as well as County Commission, the judges, and so on. So they know our point of view, but now our goal has to be to go back to them the first of the year and to let them know what the NAACP's agenda is at the State House.
Okay. When you talk about that shift, how do you think that shift might say, as far as some Republicans, you could say, was on the same agenda as the NAACP, right, some were not. Right. How do you think that might play out, the ones that were and the ones that are not?
Well, that's what I don't know the answer to that. That's mm-hmm. what we have to find out. That's why I said we have to put our agenda out there. For example, at the state level, any voter suppression bills would be against our position. If the legislature pursues the Stand Your Ground bill, that would be against our position. There was one other bill that dealt with reducing the penalties for discrimination in housing. Those are three that I know are already on our agenda that we will be pursuing. There was one other one that would be out there, and that has to do with the whole issue of capital punishment. You know, there has been a Supreme Court task force that reported back some 30-some recommendations, and those will be put forward in the next General Assembly as well. And they're primarily looking at capital punishment when, when only the large states are those that can afford to do capital punishment. And so the larger counties are doing capital punishment because of large expense. The smaller counties are not. So it means many people who are being charged with capital offenses are coming out of the Big Eight. And so there has to be a raising of consciousness from that point of view. So we are working with, at the state and local level, several groups who are against the death penalty. And that certainly will be one more issue on our agenda as we go into the next General Assembly.
Okay. You mentioned voter suppression. They're trying to get names for the Voters' Rights Act.
Bill of Rights.
Bill of Rights. Mm-hmm. Could you explain a little bit about that? Well,
there has been an effort. The NAACP has been a part of that, and primarily coming from the Ohio Legislative Black Caucus, the African American legislators in the General Assembly, to put in the Constitution language that will establish the days, weekend voting, the hours for weekend voting. So often, as we have seen the last two General Assembly, we get used to weekend votings. We get used to Sunday, souls to the polls. We get used to voting in the evenings during the week. And the General Assembly has constantly removed those days. We had something called Golden Week, and then we didn't have Golden Week. So voters get confused. And Golden Week was an opportunity where one could register and vote within the same period. It's where the early part of voting and the ending of voter registration overlapped those 7 or 10 days. And that was called Golden Week, where you could register to vote and go right across the street and vote on Election Day. The General Assembly took that away. So the Ohio's Legislative Black Caucus and other groups around the state who have joined them are looking at the Voters' Bill of Rights to put some of these measures in our Constitution. They need signatures from all 88 counties, or at least half the counties, to put the initiative. And so it will end up being on the ballot, where voters will have a chance to vote whether they want this in our Constitution or not. I'm not sure when the group is ready to file. They're still collecting signatures. They may file and be ready for the next primary, or may wait until the November election of next year. But that is another issue out there that NAACP is working with our members of the General Assembly to make sure we have that initiative going.
Do you know, are people able to come to our office to sign signatures, or union, or where can they find somebody to sign signatures?
I'm sure we have some at the office, and so they could come there. But I think there are groups, various union and church groups, that are passing the petition. So I would just say to the listening audience, if you're interested in the Voters' Bill of Rights, listen for it, because I'm sure shortly after the first of the year, and leading up to the first year, but certainly after the first of the year, you'll hear more about it, and there'll be a long, hard push to get people to sign the petitions. I know they're at the polls on Election Day. Where the campaign goes from here to the end of the year, I'm not clear, so I have to wait and see what the Representative Reese out of Cincinnati, who is the main leader of this initiative, what their directions might be for us.
Okay. What were some of the issues in this last go-around that the NAACP was really pushing for, that we might have gained some ground, might have lost some ground, but it's still out there, and we're still pushing?
Well, those issues that I talked about, stand your ground, voter suppression, and I don't know, that's why we have to analyze it. I guess we're still in the analytical stage. We knew that we had support in the Senate, in the Senate against stand your ground. I don't know if there was a strong change in the Senate makeup, because we only had one local state senator up for re-election, and he won. And so we have to wait and see what the makeup is, and that's part of what we have to do over the next couple of months, put our agenda out there and see where they stand. The bill dealing with discrimination in housing That is in its early stages, and I don't think any local legislators were on that bill. But I think it's something that, again, we will have to put out there and see. There's one other bill that I think is important to us, and that is the bill that would make it a capital punishment if someone sells a controlled substance and another person dies from it. So that would make it, if I sell someone a drug and it's a controlled substance and the person dies, then I as the seller would then be charged with capital murder. And so we're very concerned with that, and it's going in the wrong direction. And at our, as you know, at our last state conference a few weeks ago, we voted to oppose that bill. So that'll be another one to see where it's going to go. This period in the General Assembly is called lame duck. And so we're not sure what happens. And it's sometimes been called the silly season, depending on where the legislature is at, or if they'll just wait. Because anything that doesn't pass by the end of this year will have to be reintroduced in the next General Assembly. So we'll have to wait and see. Not wait. We'll have to keep our eye on, because we have to be constant vigil towards whatever's going on in both the State House and Congress.
Okay. Do you think because of the switch in the National Senate that it's going to make things tougher for the president to go ahead with his agenda? Or because there was a few things they wanted to get through before they went on break. So, you know, kind of leaves things up to him if he can talk to the
Senate Majority Leader, or the President of the U.S. Senate. Yeah, you know, I think that's a very interesting question from the point of view. There's been a lot of pushback from the Affordable Care Act. So that could be one of the things on the chopping block. You know, the members of the Congress could push to repeal it, or they could push to modify it, depending on where they're at. And of course, from a legislative point of view, it's legislation has to pass both bodies. Then it goes to the president for signature, and he can choose to veto it. Well, so then you have an override of the president's veto. So we could see a very interesting dynamics in the legislative process. There was a cartoon that I saw not too long ago where the president, well, yesterday in fact, the president had his veto stamp already ready. Because I guess that's the way we might see things, that Congress will pass something and go to the president, he will veto it, then they have to override the veto. So I think for us, the next 2 years would be very interesting. Or Congress could choose to do nothing, as many people believe they've done the last 2 years, and get ready for the presidential election. Because this is when that season will begin. Early next year, we'll start hearing names of who wants to be president of the United States from both parties. And so maybe they'll spend the time posturing themselves and not dealing with legislation. The other piece is immigration. You know, the president has wanted to do something. Members of Congress had a different point of view. We could see the president do an executive order as it relates to immigration. And many members of the Congress don't want that to happen. In fact, many of them perspective is to secure the borders first. Secure the borders and then go after illegal aliens in this country. But don't let any new people in until we've made sure we will prevent any new people from coming in. So secure the borders first. So immigration will be on there. And I think there's one other issue dealing with the environment, clean coal. And so those are the issues that I think will still be there around January of next year when Congress comes back, and we'll have to see what they're talking about and whether they will work together or if they will simply get ready for 2016.
That's, I know there's a lot of people out there, they're liking what you're saying. Other people's like, eh. Yeah. But me personally, I was looking at it from the state thing with the Affordable Care Act. If they vote to say no to that, what happens to the individuals that got insurance because of it, got cheaper insurance? What do those people do? Or what do you think they would do?
Well, that is in fact the fear, I guess, when you try to unravel legislation that's put in place, and as we know that the market exchanges will be kicking in here soon. I think that people have between now and maybe it's October.
November 7th, I think.
November, okay.
We're talking about.
To long this period to enroll in the program. And the question always is, when you revert back in public policy, what happens to the people already there? And so I don't know what Congress would do. They may grandfather those folks in under some new, health care plan, or they modify the affordable health care plan to address the concerns, because still there were 1 million Ohioans without health care. And we know that this goes back probably before President Truman, and I think it may even go back before that this issue of affordable or universal health care has been talked about in this country. And actually, the two health care plans that we have, Medicaid and Medicare, came out of that. They were amendments to the Social Security Act that allowed those to come into play back then. So where we go with this whole issue of universal health care or affordable health care or health care for millions and millions of Americans.
Expanded Medicaid.
Yeah. And, I mean, those are all the things that Congress could be playing with. But the real issue goes back to it's unfortunate and well, it's hard to believe that the large industrial nation in the world can't find a way to provide health care for its poor citizens, and that has to be the ultimate goal. How we do that, because ultimately they find themselves in the emergency wards, or they may find themselves doing without and dying because of it. There was a story that I read many years ago. A person had a tooth problem, didn't get it taken care of, it got more infected, and he died from it. And so we see things of that nature. So I think the President's affordable health care was a step in the right direction. It's something that many legislators have been pushing for, but we may have to modify it, but we don't want to throw the whole thing out.
Right. Well, I'd say the legislature is going to have their hands full, and it kind of puts people in the limbo where they don't know about their insurance, or if they're going to keep it, or if they're, what's going to happen, because there was that large number that went into health care, and now you've got where, just like with any, you have a span of time. Right. If you weren't in it before, you got to get in it. If you want to change it, you got to change it.
Right.
So what do I do? Do I change it, not change it? Is Congress going to do this or do that? And that puts a lot of stress on the public in general. Might be a good question for y'all to ask your congressman.
Right.
What's he going to do?
I think that's right, that the conversation has to begin locally, and members in the community needs to ask their members of Congress, what will happen now? And if you're for affordable health care and you're in the system now, if you're registered for one of the exchanges, you need to ask that question. Or at least make the member of Congress know that it's on your mind and you're worried about what's going to happen.
Right.
Yeah. One of the other things, Carolyn, was the turnout. I think we saw the lowest turnout of voters in the state of Ohio in our history. I think it was like 39%. Now that's 10% less than 2 years ago, 2 years ago, I think, and or maybe 4 years ago. So we have to ask ourselves a very serious question: why aren't people voting? What are the reasons, and address those issues, because part of the working democracy is that we give someone the authority to go to Columbus and Washington and make decisions on our behalf. And if we have less than 50% of the voters turning out to express themselves, then I think we have to ask ourselves a very serious question as it relates to citizenry and performing your duties as a citizen in the state and nation. So I think that is going to rattle my brain for a while, and I'm going to probably have to have some focus groups or some groups to find out what it is that people are so upset, mad at government that they won't even engage in the voting. Groups like NAACP and others spend a lot of time registering people to vote, offering rides to the poll on election day, and we did a great job, But then when you see the turnout to be less than 50%, 39–40% of the voters turned out statewide, I think we have to scratch our heads and just say, what the heck's going on, and what can we do different?
Yeah, I think, too, part of it is just general frustration. Because, you've got Congress, and it seems like they have one agenda, the president has another, and they can't seem to get together.
Right.
And it leaves us holding the bag. And so we're still holding the bag.
Right.
So people do have to take the time, and it's necessary to get out to vote, because if you don't like the way things went, you have nothing to say because you didn't vote. Right.
But I don't think there's anything new from the point of view of the people being on one page, the legislature being on another page, and the president being on another page. I mean, that's happened throughout our history. This is just unprecedented. And so I think that's what raises the serious light bulb for me, that 39% of the folks in the state chose to vote in this election. So I think, again, NAACP is going to be doing something, some focus groups or whatever, to see how we can't get people more excited about the election. As candidates, there was always this thing about the top of the ticket. And I don't know if that created or not. With the implosion of the Democrats' top ticket person, the candidate for governor, if that had a significant impact on the enthusiasm of Democrats not to go out and vote. But still, 39%, we still had members of Congress, we had the legislature to vote on, and all of that plays into this conversation. Even though our state U.S. senators were not up this time around, we had a number of members of Congress who were running for election, as well as members of the State Assembly.
Well, as it stands right now, we have a lot of work to do, trying to inform people that mid-year term elections are just as important as the presidential election.
Exactly.
Because most of your local, state and local city and county people are the ones that impact you right away, so don't throw out the midterm. Find out more about it. There's a lot of groups around town that give you that information consistently. So just tell you new folks, you need to, if you don't know, ask somebody, read and find out what's going on. Or if you're not satisfied with the way your representatives are representing you in Congress, then it's up to you to vote those folks out. But I'm glad you came by, and really appreciate it that you could spend this, few minutes with us talking about the election, and I'm sure we'll have you back again, especially talking about next year's election.
Next year, yeah. All politics is local next year, so next year are all the local races. Okay.
Well, we want to thank you all for coming out, and if you have any questions for Tom, call down to the office at 937-222-2172 and leave him a message if he's not there in the office, and I'm sure he'll get back to you. Everybody have a great day.